In this video, I'm going to give you two things you want to make sure are not on your tax return before you go to file it. The first thing is if you have anything on your profit and loss statement that says miscellaneous expenses, or sometimes it's also put down as other expenses. Regardless, this very non-specific terminology is not an acceptable way to put expenses on your tax return. Now, if you have a Schedule C, what you may notice is that on line 27A of the Schedule C, there is a line that says other expenses. But the important thing to remember there is, down at Part 5 of the Schedule C, there's actually a list where you can itemize all the things that fall into that other category. So when you're doing this, you are properly itemizing them on the actual tax return. You're not putting something down so vague on the return as other expenses or miscellaneous expenses. At least you shouldn't be. If you do have miscellaneous expenses on your tax return, if I were going to look at your taxes, I would immediately look at that. Because it's miscellaneous. So what's miscellaneous? Is it for the office? Is it for the car? Or what is it for? So it's very vague and it leaves a lot of questions, and you don't want to have that on your return. Now, the second thing you want to avoid having on your tax return is anything that's a flat number. I looked at a return for a client recently, and she had numbers on there like $2,000, $3,000 listed for her expenses. It's just very obvious that those aren't real numbers. And what happens in a lot of cases is people hand their bank statements to an accountant to prepare their tax return. I was having this conversation with a client the other day. In their mind, they think that the accountant's going to take that information and get the maximum possible deduction for them. Here's what really happens. The accountant looks at roughly how much money ran through the accounts, and they just make some crap up, like $2,000 here, $3,000 there. They put flat numbers on the return, and that is just a big no-no. The only thing worse than putting flat numbers on a return is putting identical numbers on a return. So if you had one expense that was $2,000 and another expense that was $2,000 and they're both $2,000 flat, that for sure is going to be a red flag. So you don't want to have that on your return either. So just to recap, two things you want to never have on your return. Never put anything down that's miscellaneous expenses or other expenses or just an undefined category of expenses. And the second thing is, don't have any flat numbers on your tax return. And the easiest way to get around that is to just have QuickBooks in place or have some kind of system for tracking your expenses. That way the numbers you're putting on the return are real numbers, not just something that the accountant makes up. It's important to remember with these tax returns that even though the accountant might have prepared it for you, when you sign off on that tax return, you're ultimately taking the responsibility for what's on that. So if the accountant put a bunch of fake numbers on there, it still more or less falls on you that you have fake numbers on your tax return. That's about going to wrap up this video. I hope you found this helpful. We'll see you in the next one.